Keanu Reeves accomplished to count the letter, aerial his head, and afterwards added a distinct word, absolved off the stage. 200 bodies in the flat watched in complete silence. The cameras kept rolling. Jimmy Fallon sat arctic at his desk, his aperture hardly open, clumsy to anatomy words. The Roots, who had been arena cautiously in the background, chock-full midnight. The audience, accomplished to acknowledge with amusement and applause, did neither. They aloof stared because what had aloof happened on the Tonight appearance was an allotment of the script. It wasn't planned, and it absolutely wasn't article anyone would forget. But to accept why Keanu absolved off that stage, why Jimmy couldn't allege, and why that letter afflicted everything, we charged to go back to 3 weeks afore this taping, back to a baby hospital allowance in Portland, Oregon, area a 12-year-old babe called Sarah Mitchell was autographed the best important letter of her abbreviate life. Sarah had been a fan of the Tonight appearance back she was 8 years old. Not because she accepted all the jokes or knew who every celebrity bedfellow was, but because watching Jimmy Fallon fabricated her forget, alike for aloof 30 minutes, that she was sick. Date for leukemia doesn't accord you a bounding affidavit to smile. But Jimmy did every distinct night. Her parents had accomplished out to the appearance months earlier, acquisitive for a video message, maybe a active photo, article to lift Sarah's alcohol during her final annular of treatments. The producers accustomed hundreds of agnate requests every week. They couldn't acknowledge to all of them. But Sarah's letter was different. She didn't ask for annihilation for herself. Instead, she wrote about Keanu Reeves. Dear Mr. Fallon, the letter began. I apperceive you apparently get actor letters, and I apperceive you can't apprehend all of them. But if you could accord this to Keanu Reeves if he's any time on your show, I would be so grateful. He doesn't apperceive me, but his movies help me accept that a back activity is really, absolutely hard. You can still accept to be kind. You can still accept to accumulate going. I appetite him to apperceive that he fabricated a difference. Alike if he never knows my name. The letter never fabricated it to Keanu. At Atomic, not through official channels. Sarah anesthetized abroad 2 weeks afterwards she mailed it. Her mother, Rebecca, begin the abstract in Sarah's account and acquainted online. Not assured annihilation to appear of it, aloof absent to account her daughter's aftermost wish. The column went viral. And 3 canicule later, Keanu's aggregation accomplished out anon to Rebecca. What happened next, Cypher could accept predicted. Not the producers, not Jimmy, and absolutely not the admirers who bought ticket celebration. They were aloof activity to watch a fun backward night show. Subscribe and leave an animated version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. Keanu didn't appetite publicity for what he was planning. He didn't appetite cameras documenting his appointment to Rebecca's home in Portland. He artlessly showed up unannounced and spent 4 hours with Sarah's family, alert to belief about her life, attractive at photos, and acquirements about the babe who had accounting him that letter. Afore he left, he asked Rebecca for one thing. A archetype of the Aboriginal letter. The one Sarah had drafted in her account afore commitment, the typed version. I'd like to apprehend it. He told her on television. If that's accept with you, Rebecca didn't accept at first. Apprehend it where? Why? But Keanu explained. Sarah capital me to apperceive her words, but I anticipate the apple should apperceive them, too. I anticipate bodies charged to apprehend what a 12-year-old babe adverse afterlife accepted about activity bigger than best of us anytime will. 2 weeks later, Keanu was appointed as a bedfellow on The Tonight Show. The producers knew he capital to do article special, article al fresco the accustomed account format, but they didn't apperceive what. Jimmy was told alone that Keanu had a claimed adventure to allotment, and that it ability get emotional. No problem, Jimmy said. He'd handled affecting moments before. He was a professional. He could administer it. But Cypher was able for what absolutely happened. The appearance started normally. Jimmy did his monologue, landed his jokes. The admirers laughed on cue. A fresh he alien Keanu, who absolved out to massive applause, acid his accepted all atramentus ensemble, apprehensive smile in place, bouncing to the crowd. They did the archetypal banter, talked about his latest projects, aggregate a funny adventure about filming. Aggregate was activity absolutely as planned. Then about 8 account into the interview, Keanu accomplished into his anorak abridged and pulled out a bankrupt allotment of paper. The camera bent it, a close-up of acclimate anthology paper, edges hardly torn, autography and dejected ink arresting through the fold. Jimmy glanced at his cue cards, confused. This wasn't on the rundown. Jimmy, Kanu said quietly, his articulation acid through the flat noise. I charge to do article if that's okay. I charge to apprehend something. Jimmy nodded, ambiguous but trusting. Of course, man. Whatever you need. Keanu abundant the cardboard slowly, carefully, like it was fabricated of glass. The studio analysis article different, went quiet. You could apprehend the camera's adjusting focus. You could apprehend addition in the admirer's about face in their seat. Keanu looked bottomward at the letter, took a breath and began. Dear Mr. Fallon, he apprehend his articulation abiding but soft. I apperceive you apparently get a actor letters, and I apperceive you can't apprehend all of them. Jimmy's announcement changed. He sat up straighter. He didn't apperceive what this was yet, but he knew it wasn't a bit. This was real. Keanu continued. But if you could accord this to Keanu Reeves if he's any time on your show, I would be so grateful. He doesn't apperceive me, but his movies help me accept that a back activity is really absolutely hard, you. Nice. I do honest. And honestly, I've never heard anyone sing like that ever. Your activity to change everything. Barbara wiped her eyes. You actually anticipate so? I apperceive so, and I'm activity to prove it to you. Arthur abolished for a moment and came aback with an absolute tour recorder. His claimed one, the big-ticket one he'd adored for months to buy. Sing one added song aloof for the tape. Aback you're acclaimed and you will be. I'll accord this to you so you can bethink area you started. Barbara, beat and emotionally raw, sang, Cry me a river, a cappella in that hallway. Aloof her articulation and the abroad sounds of the club's abutting act debating up. Arthur recorded every note. He never got a adventitious to accord her that recording. The abutting week, Barbara's performances at the Bonsa became legendary. Industry bodies started assuming up. Managers, producers. Within months, she was on her way to Broadway. Within a year, she was a star. Arthur Goldman backward at the Bonsa for Edition Decade. A fresh formed as a freelance complete architect for 40 years. A fresh retired to a baby accommodation in Queens. He never approved to acquaintance Barbara. Never awash the tape. Never mentioned it to anyone except his daughter. She doesn't charge some old complete guy aggravation her. He told his babe Sarah whenever she appropriate extensive out, she's Barbara Streariand. I'm aloof the guy who was advantageous abundant to apprehend her afore the apple did. Aback Arthur was diagnosed with terminal blight 6 months ago. Sarah asked him one added time. Dad, let me acquisition her. Let me accord her the tape. She'd appetite to know. This time, Arthur agreed. But on one condition, he would almanac a bulletin to go with it. Article Barbara could apprehend, afterwards he was gone. Subscribe and leave a animated version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. The recording connected arena in flat 6B. Arthur's articulation recorded 2 months afore his afterlife abounding the Tonight Appearance studio. You sang Cry Me a River in that hallway, Barbara. Do you remember? You were crying. You anticipation you'd failed. But I recorded you because I knew that articulation was activity to change the world. Barbara's tears were falling advisedly now. She'd brought both easily to her face, accoutrement her mouth, her absolute anatomy afraid with bashful sobs. I kept that recording for 63 years, Arthur continued. I never awash it, never aggregate it. It was aloof for you. And now, well, I'm not actuality anymore. But my babe Sarah is activity to accomplish abiding you apprehend it. Not the recording of that night. That's castigation to accumulate if you appetite it. But this message. Jimmy accomplished beneath his lath afresh and pulled out an additional cassette, the Aboriginal recording. He placed it a claim on the lath amid them. Arthur's articulation grew softer, weaker. I capital you to apperceive that on your actual Aboriginal night aback you anticipation you'd failed. You afflicted my life. I heard article that night I'd never heard afore and never heard again. Not in 40 years of alive in music. You were abracadabra then, Barbara. Afore the fame, afore the Oscars, afore everything, you were already magic. The recording paused, the complete of columnist demography a affected breath. Then, acknowledge you for administration your articulation with the world. Acknowledge you for actuality adventurous abundant to accumulate, singing like a back you were terrified. And acknowledge you for that night in 1961 aback a 19-year-old kid with an adopted dress reminded me why music matters. The recording clicked off. The flat was silent. Not the afflictive blackout of awkwardness, but the abstruse blackout of 300 bodies witnessing article sacred. Behind the scenes, Fallon fabricated an accommodation that defied every producer's expectation. Jimmy didn't move for the bartering break. Didn't accomplish a joke. Didn't try to lighten the mood. He aloof sat there, tears alive bottomward his face, while Barbara Streisand, the woman who had articulate for presidents, who had abounding stadiums, who had won every accolade imaginable, cried in the bedfellow chair. Finally, Barbara accomplished advanced and best up the cassette tape, the Aboriginal recording from 1961. She captivated it in both easily like it was fabricated of glass. "I bethink him," she whispered. "Arthur with the glasses. He told me I'd be a star." She laughed through her tears. "I anticipation he was aloof aggravating to accomplish me feel better. He believed it." Jimmy said, "Sarah, his daughter, told me he talked about you his accomplished life. He'd see you on TV or apprehend your music and acquaint anybody I recorded her Aboriginal night. I knew afore anyone." Barbara looked at Jimmy with those acclaimed eyes now red and bloated from crying. Can I apprehend the recording? The one from that night?" Jimmy nodded. He had it ready. He'd accepted she'd ask. He played it on the flat complete system. The affection was poor, rough, distant, the complete of a bargain microphone in a hallway, but the articulation was unmistakable. 19-year-old Barbara Streisand, raw and accessible and actually transcendent, singing, "Cry Me a River" a cappella. The flat admirers heard it and understood. This was afore everything, afore fame, afore confidence. This was a abashed jailbait singing because music was the alone affair that fabricated sense. Aback it finished, the admirers rose as one continuing ovation. Not for the able fable sitting in the bedfellow chair, but for the afraid babe in that recording. For the journey, for the adventuresomeness it took to accumulate going. But this is the moment no one in the flat, and no one watching at home anytime saw coming. Jimmy stood up. He absolved about his desk, article he rarely did during interviews, and below beside Barbara's chair. "Arthur capital you to accept article else," Jimmy said quietly, affairs a baby envelope from his anorak pocket. "Sarah gave this to me. It's a letter he wrote. I haven't apprehend it. It's for you." Barbara took the envelope with afraid hands. She opened it carefully, pulled out a distinct area of cardboard covered in accurate handwriting. She apprehended it silently, tears falling assimilate the page. Aback she finished, she bankrupted it anxiously and captivated it adjoin her chest. "What did it say?" Jimmy asked gently. "If you appetite to share." Barbara took a all-a-quiver breath. "It says, Dear Barbara, on September 15th, 1961, you sang for 50 bodies in a Greenwich Village nightclub. I was one of them. You afflicted my activity that night. You reminded me that art matters, that vulnerability is strength, that the bravest affair anyone can do is allotment their accuracy with the world. Acknowledge you for your truth. Acknowledge you for your voice. Acknowledge you for that night. Love, Arthur Goldman. P.S. You were appropriate to abrasion that dress. It was perfect." The admirers erupted again. This time, not aloof applause but oral sobs. Questlove was crying. The cameramen were crying. Jimmy was above-board weeping, not alike aggravating to compose himself. Barbara stood up. She absolved to centermost stage, still captivation the letter and the cassette tape. The admirers was on their feet, crying, applauding, abode witness. "Arthur," she said, her articulation breaking as she looked up against the ceiling. "I ambition I could accept thanked you. I ambition I could accept told you that you were the Aboriginal being who believed in me. The Aboriginal one who saw article aback, I couldn't see it myself." She afraid the letter to her heart. "I'm befitting this, and I'm activity to accept to that recording every time I balloon why I started singing." Jimmy absolved over and stood beside her. He pulled a dejected agenda from his pocket, one of his cue cards from the desk. "Arthur's babe Sarah is actuality tonight," Jimmy said, gesturing to the audience. A woman in the third row stood up, tears alive bottomward her face. "Sarah, your father's allowance aloof reminded all of us why we do this. Why any of us do this." He handed Barbara the cue card. "Accumulate this too. So, you bethink this night. Allotment and subscribe. Accomplish abiding this adventure is never forgotten." Afterwards the show, Barbara asked for Arthur's address. She beatific Sarah flowers every anniversary for a year. The cassette band sits in an anatomy in Barbara's home abutting to her Oscar. And Jimmy Fallon abstruse that sometimes the best important affair a host can do is footfall aback and let a moment breathe. Let it be human. Let it be real. Arthur Goldman never became famous. But he gave a fable the allowance every artisan needs. Addition who believes in them afore the apple does.